Hello, and welcome to Opening Doors podcast. My name is Rachel Dalinka, and today my guest is Shakaboona Marshall. How are you today?
I'm doing fine, Rachel. How you doing?
I'm doing well. Shakaboona was formerly incarcerated, and upon his release, he is now working with the Human Rights Coalition in Philadelphia. The Human Rights Coalition is a really amazing group of people that are incarcerated and their families. Their mission is to empower prisoners' families to be leaders in prison organizing and to teach them how to advocate on behalf of their loved ones who are incarcerated, and to expose some of the inhumane practices of the Department of Corrections. They provide a safe place for family members and prisoners where there's no embarrassment associated with having a loved one in prison. HRC members are facing the same stigma, restrictions, dilemmas that you are going through this very minute. And they respond by education and organizing, and Shakaboona will tell us a lot more about it in our conversation today. Tell the Opening Doors guests a little bit about your story with incarceration and what brought you here today to this point.
Thank you, Rachel. Of course, my name is Shakaboona Marshall, and I'm with the Human Rights Coalition, Executive Director. And what brought me here today, being at this point that I am in my life, is that I was one of the many juveniles serving life imprisonment in the state of Pennsylvania. Approximately 500 or more juveniles that were serving life. And because of a Supreme Court case, Miller v. Alabama, I was released, into return back to society. So I'm a returning citizen. And upon my return, I immediately began doing community organizing, community activists. Much of what I was already doing while I was incarcerated. And so it's just been a terrific journey for me, and I've really been enjoying it.
How long were you inside?
I spent 35 years in prison.
Wow.
35 years.
So a lot of your adult life.
Yes.
And how were you able to get through that time while you were in prison? What are some of the things that helped you to be able to grow and get through it?
Yeah, so I think mostly it's a combination of things, but mostly I have faith, that I will someday get out, and I worked towards it. I didn't just, believe that I would just come out, but I believed that I also had to work towards it. Also, I just remember what my parents taught me when I was younger, and so falling back on that and stop being, trying to be someone that I wasn't. And I think the other thing was my daughter, so at the time, I had an infant daughter, and I had to try to help raise my daughter from in prison. And I remember that I thought to myself, I don't want my daughter to grow up and just know of her dad only being in prison. So I wanted to leave a different legacy. So those are like the main three things. And so for me to do all that, I felt as though I had to start doing work on myself. I had to start, trying to change, my thinking, change my behavior. I was young, I was very impulsive and a little hot-tempered, a little selfish, typical things for a teenager. So yeah, those were the things that allowed me to make change. And I thought about all the great leaders that we have had in this country and the things that they have done for the uplift of Black Americans and all Americans. I felt as though I had to carry on the torch and do my duty and continue along that path of these illustrious leaders like the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King, like Minister Malcolm X, like Ella Baker and Shirley Chisholm, and we can go on and on of people that I admire. But that was what motivated me.
That's amazing, and it really is. And the fact that you were able to be released, and now you're able to do the work that you're doing. So I talked a little bit in the intro about the Human Rights Coalition. Can you tell me more about the kind of work that that you're doing? Because it's so important. It very much touches to the heart of what this podcast is about.
Yeah, definitely. So the genesis of the Human Rights Coalition began with myself and an elder political prisoner by the name of Russell Marone Schultz, who was from the Black Panther Party organization. He has been unlawfully imprisoned, and he was serving, multiple, I guess, life sentences as well. And so he continued on doing his work that he was doing for the Black Panther Party within the prison systems. I met him, and we just started working together, doing positive things in the community, but within the prisons. But we wanted to also do something in the community for our community, for those of us who are incarcerated and people who were formerly incarcerated, as well as their families. The idea was, we were looking at the conditions of our confinement, the illegal sentences and wrongful convictions that were going on, and we wanted to speak to it. We wanted to have a platform to be able to talk about these things, to tell the public what's really going on. And so we started the Human Rights Coalition in 2001. It was established, but we've been working on it probably as early as 1994. And we were finally able to get established with our family members, with community activists here in Philadelphia and Pittsburgh and other areas, as well as students, right? And so with the help of these people, we established it. And the whole idea was also that we didn't think that people who were incarcerated were being treated humanely. We thought a lot of what was going on was cruel and unusual punishment towards us. A lot of abuse and torture goes on in prison, as well as murder. And the murder is sometimes at the hands of other incarcerated people, but it's also a lot of times at the hands of correctional officers, murdering, individuals. And so we believe that we have a human right. And so this is how human rights come into the equation. And we start looking at how we can hold the prison, the Pennsylvania Department of Correction, the state, and America at large, right? How can we hold them accountable? So we start looking at the international treaties from the United Nations dealing with human rights, and that a lot of different countries are signatories to. And so we wanted to bring that issue to the World Court. We also wanted to abolish the for-profit prison industrial complex and the so-called criminal justice system, because we don't believe that this criminal justice system is fair, especially when it's racially motivated and racially discriminatory towards Black, brown people, and even a class discrimination, right, against poor people, and particularly poor white people. Because after African Americans, you have the next largest population of incarcerated people are Caucasian people. We have America that's trying to use prisons as a social trash bin. We were not going for it. We believed that we were better than that. We knew we were better than that. We knew we were human beings. We were citizens of this country, and we refused to be treated as less than. And so that has been a core point of the Human Rights Coalition, that we advocate for human rights for everyone, and that we seek to abolish the for-profit prison industrial complex. And so that led us having established chapters in Philadelphia, Pittsburgh. We had a chapter at one time in Chester, and we had chapters in Harrisburg. We even had a chapter in Houston, Texas, and an overseas chapter, I believe, in Portugal. And so when we was at, our largest and most popular, and from our activism came many other different groups at the time, because we started this when it was still during the time of tough on crime, the mass incarceration, and people in prison were not. There was no empathy for people in prison, and so we didn't have any help. So we had to rely on our families.
And there's been a lot of shift in understanding that so many sentences are, just way overboard, and that there are a lot of people that are incarcerated that just really should not be. And fortunately, there, through your work and through many other people's work, reforms are happening. There are now, people are really looking at alternatives to imprisonment, that imprisonment is not the first place to go, but that rehabilitation on the outside. Tell me a little bit about the award ceremony and the awards that ceremony that you guys, that your organization had in January. And
the Human Rights Coalition, we have an annual True Faces of Second Chance awards, banquet and awards. We had one this January. In January, I believe it was on the 17th, if my dates is correct. So what this event is about, it actually all started with myself, a brother by the name of Eric Sharif Riddick, and another guy by the name of Terrell Woolfolk. And it was during like 2022, and there was a lot of election and stuff going on in the city. And so you had different candidates, both on, sadly to say, on the left and on the right, Democrat and Republican, were starting to talk a lot of tough on crime rhetoric. We need to bring back tough on crime. We need to bring back stop and frisk, and we know these things failed, and these things brought about mass incarceration. These things brought about the breakup of families and communities, and they're talking about bringing this stuff back. And on top of that, they were using people who have come home formerly incarcerated, people who are justice impacted, as boogeymen. So they were trying to demonize it all over again. So a few of us recognized that and decided that we were not going to allow that to happen. So we called for a meeting of justice impacted people right here in City Hall at the Octavia statue right here on South Broad Street. And we had approximately about 30 justice impacted people who come out to rally and not protest, but just to rally and come together and give a press release that we weren't standing for it. So
right, that you're here, and
yes,
that you are citizens and
that's
need
right,
to have the rights of all other citizens,
right,
that you paid your debt,
and that was the big thing. We paid our debt, we did our time, and so what this country always say is, hey, okay, you have to. If you commit a crime, you have to do the time, right? You have to serve your debt to society. After that is paid, you come back, you reintegrated in society, all is well, right? But no, that's not what happens.
No.
What happens is you go to prison, you're in there being abused and tortured, you're not being rehabilitated. Anyone who really gets rehabilitated is because they rehabilitated themselves. And so then when they come out, it's a bunch of roadblocks, right? That's put in front of them that discriminates them against them from really integrating themselves into society. As far as it's very difficult for them to get identification. It's very difficult for them to attain jobs, housing. It's a lot of discriminatory practices around housing as well. And then loans. So it's just so much. Then you can't even, even though you're a citizen, you can vote and everything now in Pennsylvania, but you can't sit on a jury. They say you can't run for office. It's a lot of stipulations. So basically, we walk around with a scarlet letter. And
that's right. And that's part of why you said, okay, we need to have this award ceremony to show these people are back and they're contributed to communities and they need to be recognized and appreciated.
Yeah. And so I've told many politicians, I spoke at many events, universities, and I tell people that justice impacted people, they work in the DA's office. They're working in the mayor's administration.
Mm-hmm.
They're working in the police department. They're doing reentry work. They're running the nonprofit reentry organizations and other nonprofit organizations. They working in all sectors of society. So we're everywhere and doing terrific things, wonderful things that's uplifting the community, especially trying to end the violence within the cities and trying to be mentors of youth.
Exactly.
And showing them the right way as opposed to the wrong way. And so we choose to honor these people because we want the public to know. We want people to see. Most of the people that's coming home, they're doing good. They're not coming back into society and preying on society and doing illegal crimes and stuff. That we have a good deal of people that come home and are doing the right thing. And so
hard as it can be, and there are so many barriers, as we've discussed.
So my thing was this. I wanted to give men and women their flowers while they live.
Absolutely.
So we acknowledged them, and we acknowledged them with a Second Chance Award, Justice Impacted Second Chance Award. We give out like 10 of them to 10 individuals in the city who are doing, I'm talking about exceptional work, not just regular, because, we're all doing like regular work, but people who are going, who have taken it to the next level, that sort of work, right? So we reward them, and it's a lot. Then we have what we call the Russell Maroon Schultz Innocence Award, where we award men and women who were innocent but wrongly convicted. And they're coming out here and they're telling their stories and they're giving back to society, even though they're not obligated to give back to society.
Right. Even though that they face something that could just derail you. Yeah.
And one of the things we would like to do is we would like to make sure that we hold the city accountable for the wrongful conviction of these innocent men and women and make sure they are compensated so that they can actually live their life and not have to start, behind the 8 ball where they still facing discrimination because they have been in prison. So these people need to be repaired, and made whole again. And so it doesn't take a lot, but they need to do that and make good on correcting the wrong that they have done to many individuals. And then we also have our granddaddy award of them all, I like to say, is our Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Achievement Award. And so we give this to the person that we feel as though is like holding up the sky. They doing this work, and it's a lot, but they like taking it on their shoulders.
Who won that award this year?
Oh, this year we had a guy by the name of Anthony Smith, a young guy who was a school teacher, and he was involved in the Ferguson's rebellion that was going on and part of Black Lives Matter. And he was a young fellow that was wrongly convicted. They charged him up on a federal indictment for being around, I believe, when somebody firebombed the police car. And he was one of the many people that was around the vicinity of that area and that they just picked out, but was not
involved.
Right.
Right. Had nothing to do with it.
Yeah. And so, they gave him a year sentence. They stripped him of his teaching credentials. And so they forbid him to ever teach again.
Oh.
So he has to start his whole life over. And it's really unfair, but the government, 98% of the criminal cases that come through the courts are pled out. So they force people to plead guilty because the deck is stacked and you're going up. More than likely, you don't have a lawyer. You don't probably have the money for it. So you have to get a court-appointed lawyer. But the government has the whole city treasurer at its disposal, or the state treasurer, or in case of the feds, the whole federal treasury at their disposal to prosecute you. And then they make it really bad, whereas though you could possibly spend the rest of your life.
Right. So prison, people end up taking a lesser plea because they're weighing their options, and their options are looking pretty bad.
And they don't care about justice. So they don't care whether you're innocent or not. They just know they want this conviction, and they want to do everything in their power to get their conviction. So it's a lot of coercion. So that's why we have the high conviction rates. People plead guilty because it doesn't matter. A lot of times you can be innocent, but when that sort of pressure come down on you and you're facing possibly your life being taken away from you, it's a good chance that you will plead guilty as well to something that you didn't do.
So Anthony Smith, what is he doing now? That he got this award?
Well, today, Anthony Smith is working for, I believe it's called, I know I'm going to butcher the name, but I believe it's called the Abolition School.
Okay.
I believe it's called the Abolition School.
And I'll check that and make sure that I get that right in the show notes.
Yeah.
With a link.
Yeah. And so it's a program. It's not an actual school to my understanding, but it's a community program where they're giving sort of political education. They have like a curriculum that they go through. They provide services and stuff. So, yeah.
So he was able to say, I'm not going to let this stop me. I'm giving back. I'm making sure that other people don't face what I faced.
Yeah. So basically, he's working as a community organizer within Philadelphia.
Just to stop for a moment and pause and say how amazing it is that so many people that have been impacted unfairly by the justice system take it upon themselves to make sure that they work to stop and prevent others from going through what they went through.
Yeah.
You could just be like, okay, I'm done. But so many people say, no, this has to end. And that's what's so important about these awards, is to elevate all of that effort.
Yeah, and it's definitely gaining traction because every year we have at least 300 to 400 people that attend. Many politicians attend, city officials attend, candidates running for elections come through. We have all sorts of people that come
That's
through,
wonderful.
business people, foundations, and come through there as well.
And what it does for families too, to be able to say, my dad or my mom has done this great thing, and I can be proud of them. It's really important. It's important for families.
Yes, it is. It's definitely important for families.
And for the parent to be able to show their kid, I am more than my sentence. I am more than those mistakes that I made.
Yeah, that's right. And a lot of people, they actually bring their parents along with them, and their parents be so proud. They bring their children along with them and other family members. And you should see the smile on their faces and the accomplishments. for their accomplishments. And I think this is really great because I have a lot of people that nominate other justice impacted people, say, hey, this woman is doing tremendous work in the community. She needs to be recognized, or this same thing with this guy or whatever. So yeah, we want to bring more attention through using the True Faces of Second Chances that the Human Rights Coalition do. But we also do many other things within the city and within the state of Pennsylvania. So we have, within our organization, we focus on environmental justice. We focus on criminal justice reform. We also have a media justice committee that we do. And so with environmental justice, while we was in prison, there's a lot of these buildings that were built, in the early 1900s and stuff like that. So they were built with, materials that had asbestos in it. And then it's so old, you have black mold in there. Oh. They used to be self-sufficient. So they used to have their own coal plants to produce their own electricity and heat and stuff. And so they used to have prisoners working inside these coal plants, no mask on or anything, and just shoveling coal and inhaling all this stuff. So we have that.
To work on helping the environments within the prison become more safe and.
Yeah, for example, in I believe it's LaBelle, PA, at a prison called SCI Fayette, that prison was built on a Superfund site. And the Superfund site is basically toxic waste. Land, right. Yeah. And so, but it is built on over 40 tons of coal fly ash that people are inhaling and stuff like that. So a lot of the guards, the incarcerated people, as well as the community nearby, are suffering from cancer, respiratory illnesses and stuff like that. And so we want to put a stop to it. So we have a campaign that's called to Stop Toxic Prisons, in Toxic Prisons campaign, where we're looking at the prisons from an environmental justice angle. So today we have probably over 11 or more prisons, state prisons, that have bad water quality. So they have to truck in bottled water. But we had to fight to get them to truck in bottled water, because initially they was only giving bottled water to the guards and to the rescue dogs that they trained, that the prisoners train to send out into society, so people can have rescue dogs, to walk
so
with.
So the dogs were getting good water, but the prisoners were not.
Yes. So we had to fight for that. And so it's still a fight because the water table is of a poor quality. We had one prison, actually two, SCI Fayette and SCI Monohoy, which is right out here in the southeast region of Pennsylvania, that they were built in between two refinery plants. So all the smoke and fumes and stuff that's going in, the two prisons is trapped in between that. Yeah, so we have a lot of work to do in regards to environmental justice within the criminal justice system.
That's a really interesting point. Thank you so much for bringing that up. I appreciate that, because that's not something that we've talked about on the podcast at all.
Yeah. In dealing with criminal justice reform, one of the main things that we're trying to do, and I'm going to name two because they're both very important. One of them is, in Pennsylvania, we have life sentences where no matter what the sentence is, whether it's first or second degree, it's basically a death sentence. You're never getting out of prison. You're to die in prison. And many of these people never murdered anyone.
Right.
Some people were just accomplished in the sense that they were a getaway driver for a crime, a robbery that went bad or something. It's a number of ways that people get caught up into this, and they haven't even killed anybody or intended to kill anybody. It definitely wasn't premeditated, but they're spending the rest of their life in prison until they die. And we want to basically have parole eligibility for these people.
For the people that were not directly involved.
just for them to have the chance to come up for parole, right? Whether it's for first degree or second degree murder, give them a chance to show that they have change. They show remorse, and they're doing positive things within the prison systems, and they are ready for a second chance. So that's one thing. We believe in second chance. So that's why we have the True Faces a Second Chance Award, because without that second chance, I wouldn't be out here to do what I'm doing right now.
Right.
But let them tell it I was a guy that will come out and, get into something else or whatever in return. Well, it's not true.
Yeah.
It's not true.
And that's and it's really important for people to be aware of some of the scare tactics that are used in the media, and realize that which is why we're here doing this podcast, the human faces and the human stories behind incarceration. So thank you so much for all the work you do.
I appreciate you.
And thank you for coming on Opening Doors.
Yeah, I appreciate it. I love to be on anytime you need me, Rachel. I'm on here. We can talk. I have a lot to talk about.
Yes, I know. I feel like we just scratched the surface.
Yeah, we are. It's because it's so many issues. So we are just scratching the surface. But this is something you're doing very good work, very important work. The public needs to know what's going on within those prison systems, how their tax dollars are being used, and how people are coming back who are returning. A lot of them are, quite a few of them are returning to not so good circumstances, and they need help with reentry.
Yeah, they need help with reentry, and society. It's important for society to make the changes necessary for people that have been incarcerated to be destigmatized and allowed to take away some of those barriers. One thing I want to mention is that in Bucks County, they now have just finally worked with the Department of Transportation or whatever it is to get people before they leave prison to have ID. So that's another big one. I know that's a big barrier. So it's starting. Hopefully other counties in Pennsylvania will take that up, and people will be able to leave prison with an ID.
Yes.
Identification. So thank you again.
Thank you. I appreciate you. Thanks for having me.